Normally, I begin these readers' productions with an introduction. Today, however, I've decided to give both an introduction and when we have ended our production, to add another part of the introduction, which I'm calling the epilogue. I'm doing this for those of you who might not be familiar with the story, because a full introduction would spoil the ending. I've taken a radio script from the 1930s, made some slight changes, but overall it is, I believe, true to the story and true to the script. The story itself is about 2,000 words, which is only slightly more than 2 of my sermons. There are 4 voices in this production. David Jolliffe will be the voice of the storyteller. And thank you, David, for agreeing to do this at the last minute.
You're welcome.
The mid-20-year-old married couple, Della and Jim, will be the voices of Ruby Erickson and Carson Haller, 2 of St. Paul's finest graduates from the EYC. Rounding out the cast will be Kathleen Trotter, and she will be the voice of Madame Sofronie. I must give a personal nod to Frank Schneid, who last December suggested that I look at The Gift of the Magi as a possible reader's theater. I did, and here we are. I also want to thank David and Doug Cummins for their assistance in casting this production. William Sidney Porter, born in 1862, was a prolific short story writer who is better known for his pen name, O. Henry. He wrote the short story, The Gift of the Magi, in 1905 over several drinking sessions at Pete's Tavern on Irving Street in New York City. Pete's Tavern is still there, and is one of the several taverns in New York that claim to be the oldest taverns in the city. A plaque on the wall recognizes that O. Henry wrote his short story in that place. Alcoholism was not his only vice. He had been accused and convicted of bank fraud, an offense that led him to escape to Honduras for some time, and a crime for which he eventually was incarcerated and forced to pay a fine of about $900. One of the consistent elements in O. Henry's short stories are the surprise, if not bizarre, endings. Many of his works contain at least the flavor of religion, for he is often, at least at St. David's Episcopal Church in Houston, Texas, thought to have been a practicing Episcopalian. St. David's has a corner of their library dedicated to O. Henry. It is my wish that you'll receive this rendering of The Gift of the Magi as my Christmas present to you, the community of St. Paul's Church in Fayetteville. The Gift of the Magi, short story by O. Henry, adopted for readers' theaters by yours truly.
The year is 1905. The place, the Upper West Side of Manhattan in New York City. It's a furnished one-bedroom apartment, 1 flight up from a common vestibule. A woman in her mid-20s is sitting at the kitchen table. She has emptied the contents of a mason jar onto the table, and she separates the coins in pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters, and begins to count.
$1.84, $1.85, $1.86, $1.87.
She has counted it several times, but it always comes out the same. And tomorrow would be Christmas. $1.87 with which to buy a present for Jim, her Jim. There was clearly nothing to do but flop down on the worn-out sofa and sob uncontrollably. So she did. Now, while her sniffles are subsiding, I want to call your attention to the mailbox in the vestibule. There's a card attached to it, and it bears the name Mr. James Dillingham Young. The Dillingham had been flung to the breeze during a former period of prosperity when its possessor was being paid $30 a week. Now, when the income had been cut by 1/3, the letters of Dillingham looked blurred, as though they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unassuming D. But whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and reached the flat, he was called Jim and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham Young. That's Della. Della finished her cry and was looking in the mirror. She suddenly takes down her hair and lets it fall to its full length beyond her knees. There were two possessions of the James Dillingham Youngs that had any value. Jim was the proud possessor of a gold watch that had once belonged to his father and his grandfather. The other prized possession was Dilla's hair. Nervously and quickly, she did her hair up again, slipped into her old brown jacket, put on her old brown hat, and in the twinkling of an eye, she was halfway down the stairs and out on the street. Della had a determined, almost desperate look as she saw a sign reading, Madame Sofroni's hair goods of all kinds. Della rushes up the stairs and collides with the portly figure of Madame Sofroni.
Madam Sofroni, will you please buy my hair?
Well, I buy hair. Dearie, take off your hat. Let's have sight at the looks of it.
The hat comes off, the pins are pulled out, and down rips the brown cascade.
I am very impressed. Impressive indeed. I'll give you $20.
All right. Only quickly, please.
In a few moments, the implacable Madame Sofroni and her scissors have done the job. And Della, minus her hair, but richer by $20, flees from the store into the street again. This time, she's looking for a different store, a store in which to buy, not to sell. At last, she finds herself in a department store amid a boisterous holiday crowd. At the jewelry counter, she longingly handles a gold watch fob and chain, simple and chaste in design.
I'll take it. And would you have a small cloth bag for the fob and chain?
Dilla was back on the street again, and it seemed like just seconds until she was back in the little furnished flat. But when she walked in the door, there was a sudden shock as the hall mirror confronted her, this time accusingly. Now came the moment of reckoning as she gazed with dismay at the short ends of her hair. Her rosy glow gave way to prudence and reason. Out came the curling iron as she set to work repairing the ravages made by generosity and love. In 40 minutes, she finished with the last curl lying tiny and close to her, making her look like a truant schoolboy. But to Della, the result was anything but wonderful.
If Jim doesn't kill me first, he'll say I look like a Coney Island chorus girl.
But there is no time for self-reflection, physical or mental. It's nearly 7 and Jim is never late. She sits nervously waiting for her Jim. She hears his steps on the stair right down from the first flight. She has always had the habit of saying silent little prayers about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispers,
Please, God, make him not to mind my hair so much. Make him think that I'm still pretty.
The door opens. Jim steps in and closes it. He has a smile of welcome on his face as he glances around the room for Della. But then the smile freezes on his lips as he sees her sitting on the edge of the sofa. An expression comes into his eyes as immovable as an English setter dog at the scent of a quail. The expression terrifies Della, who is expecting anger, surprise, disapproval, or even horror, but not this look of... She rises from the sofa and goes to Jim.
Jim, darling, don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold it because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It will grow out again. You won't mind, will you? I had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Say Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. And wait till you see the beautiful gift I got for you.
Della rattled on like that. It seemed forever. But all Jim could do was stare at her. And finally he blurted out,
Did you really cut your hair?
Sold it, I told you. Sold and gone, too. And it went for you, Jim. Maybe the hairs on my head were numbered, but nobody could ever count my love for you. Now, shall we have supper?
At last, Jim seemed to wake out of his trance. He wrapped his arms around Della, and then he carefully took out a package from his overcoat pocket and placed it on the table. Her nimble fingers quickly tore open the package, and then...
Oh, Jim, they're beautiful. How did you know? They're what I've always wanted. Oh, no. My hair. Oh, Jim, how can I wear them?
There they lay, the combs, the set Della had worshipped for so long in an exclusive shop window. Pure tortoise shell with jeweled rims, just the shade to wear in the beautiful brown, now vanished hair. Della put the combs down carefully, lovingly, and even more radiantly held the cloth bag out to him. Jim opened the little bag. He held the fob and chain in his outstretched palm. The precious metal gleamed and glowed.
Isn't it a beauty, Jim? You'll have to look at the time every 15 minutes now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks with the chain.
Jim sat down suddenly on the couch.
Della, let's put our Christmas presents away and keep them a while. My love, I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs. And now, how about supper?
The Magi, you know, were wise men who brought gifts to the babe in the manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas presents. Being wise, their gifts were no doubt wise ones, possibly bearing the privilege of exchange in case of duplication. And here I have lamely related to you the uneventful chronicle of two foolish children in a flat, who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasures of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that of all those who give gifts, these two were the wisest. Of all who give and receive gifts, these foolish ones were the wisest. They are the Magi.